All right, guys, it's Paul Singh, the Market Speculator, with the trade report for August 1st, 2017. Let's take a look at SPY and then get into the Q short yesterday. SPY here looking a little weak, but holding the 9 and set to open about break even this morning. Again, we got the negative volume pattern, but it hasn't broken down yet. So until that happens, it's all right. IWM. A little bit different, has pulled back harder, has broke down below the 9. Interestingly enough, the volume pattern is actually better here, even though price action is worse. We'll see if it tests the 50-day moving average. If the market does pull back here, it would be nice to be able to get an entry down here with some value. So we'll watch that. And then finally, what we did yesterday was short the Qs. And you can see here, much like SPY, a little more negative, very volume pattern here, and giving the classic signals of kind of a double top or failed breakout play. So you can see this was the old high. We've been talking about this since last week, that as it tried to break here and failed, although it closed just above the high, the trigger would be closing below that old high. The old high was 143.57. And we had a close yesterday of 143.23. So we had the trigger in. I took it a little earlier. Did pull back in a little bit if we look at SQQQ, which is what we use, SQQQ, which is what we used. So technically the pattern is in. We got, the test of the high, the failure of it, break below the 9, and then this ugly volume pattern. Now we'll see, sometimes the Qs have been so strong that there have been a few fake outs. The last time we got this pattern was here, and it worked. It wasn't a huge gain, but it was a good few points here. So we'll see how this one plays out. Ideally, if it could break and test this open gap here, that would be nice, or pull back even deeper. Now we've got two tech-ish positions. One is the FSLR play, which has its own breakout, and solars have been on fire and still doing well. So we entered here, and we're looking for the float up to 51.52. If the Qs pull back, sometimes it's weird that solars will act more like tech. Sometimes they act more like the commodity plays. So we'll see how that one plays out. And then Netflix, even though it's got its own fantastic earnings catalyst, the Qs pull back, it's probably going to get pulled back as well. So we're using a little bit of hedging also by taking the short in Qs, in the sense that if the market does pull back, we can make some money through that if we get stopped out of these. But anyway, the other idea here is if the market pulls back, we're using a loose enough stop that maybe we hold through it a bit before it eventually, and I think Netflix eventually will, make the run up higher, and we get to stay with it. So that's the idea here behind Netflix. Now we entered around 184, we're at 181 now. So we'll see how this one plays out here. So that's the current positions. And with FSLR, I'm gonna let it test the gap here if it does pull back. So we took a position size to where the risk aligns, that we can let it pull back some if the market does start to pull back. Again, fantastic volume pattern. Now let's actually look at SQQQ. And you see here, now this is an inverse ETF, so we go long this to short the Qs. It's just the total, I don't know if it's a mirror image or opposite, however you want to look at it, but going, instead of uptrend, it's downtrend, and then you have, instead of negative volume, positive volume pattern. Look at that right there. So it looks almost like a bottoming formation instead of a topping formation now. And that level we talked about, that open gap, is now right here at 31. And we entered here at 28. 58 or 59. I'm going to say 28.60. So using a point stop, around a point stop, maybe a little bigger, but somewhere around there. And if it were to hit 31, that would be a 2.5 point gain. So we're getting 2.5 to 1 on the risk here. So pretty good. Essentially lose 1,000, make 2,500. And that's the way we want to play these things. So that's the idea behind this setup. Let's look at a few other areas. Financials holding up well and popping this morning. So they look good, but we don't really have an entry in that right now. Energy looking good as well. Oil has been on fire, and man, we got stopped out here. A lot of this would have been a huge run. IBB is looking weak. So this is below the 9. The thing that led me towards the Qs instead of IBB was that IBB still has a nice volume pattern. So I like that better, but I will be watching LABD, which is the inverse, and you can see could look like a bottom here and run, meaning biotech would be pulling back some. So LABD is actually on the focus list if we did decide to take another short. And then gold also has been on a nice run there as well. JNUG is on our focus list and also looks like it could be bottoming. Let's look. I'm just going to quickly run through some of these focus list stocks. Sohu is an addition to our breakout list. It broke out very strong yesterday and is popping a little this morning. And then we've got SEDG, a solar stock, looking strong. LABD we already went over. UA looks like it could be bottoming. Nice move on yesterday. Arch coal, very strong yesterday. You can see here the industry indexes yesterday. Aluminum, coal, steel, a lot of the commodities did well yesterday. So we'll be watching X as well. Earnings breakout failed the gap, but let's see if it can remount here. If it remounts and the volume pattern is still good, if it remounts, we could get in FAS financials. We need a break. Maybe if you wanted, you could enter today as it remounted the 9. I'm probably not going to do that, but looks decent. ERX, energy, we've talked about these indexes already. POT, not sure what the earnings date is on this, but looking strong. There's SOX, S, semiconductors, inverse, looking decent. I'm going to put UVXY on the list. If the market does start to pop to the downside, we could see a pop to the downside. We could see a pop to the upside in UVXY, FCX, post earnings breakout play. Facebook, we'll watch to see if the market does pull back, how does it handle this gap level? So we'll keep our eye out on Facebook. Lows, we already have the trigger here. It's totally invalidated the gap down in. I'd like to get into this. A little tricky because of the moving average above it, but once it makes this type of move, a lot of times it'll bust through that as well. So we can maybe enter early. So Lowe's is at the top of my list, potentially LABD, but I'm not looking to get that aggressive right now. The way the market's kind of, I wouldn't say in turmoil, but a little hard to pick the direction right now. So that's it for Trade Report. I'll see you guys later today or early tomorrow.